All right, so are you ready to get rich from Bitcoin? I mean, that's the question on everyone's mind, right?
Well, it certainly seems to be a hot topic these days.
Yeah, and you guys have sent in a ton of articles about it.
Mm-mm.
Predictions about where the price of Bitcoin is headed, how people have already become Bitcoin millionaires, even some comparisons of like buying Bitcoin versus mining it.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for
For
us.
sure. But I think it's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think this gets right at the heart of why people are so fascinated by Bitcoin. It's this idea that anyone can strike it rich.
Right. Like it doesn't matter what your background is, where you came from.
Exactly. You could potentially become incredibly wealthy with this digital asset. But, the question remains, is it really true?
We've got these price predictions and I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah, I saw that too.
They're like right out of the gate, we've got Max Kaiser saying $200,000 by the end of the year.
Yeah, he's always been pretty bullish on Bitcoin.
To say the least, right? That's a huge jump from where it is now. Then you've got Fidelity predicting $1 billion per Bitcoin.
Billion, wow.
Yeah, by 2038 to 2040.
That's a long way out.
It is, it's interesting to think about. And then, you've got like even Hal Finney, one of the early pioneers of Bitcoin, predicted it could even reach $22 million.
Yeah, I remember that prediction. It really captures that early optimism around Bitcoin.
Wild. Right?
Yeah. But, it's important to remember that all these predictions, they're based on different methodologies, different assumptions.
That's true. That's true. So they're looking at the same thing, but kind of through different lenses.
Yeah. Like Kaiser, for example, his prediction, it seems to be based on this belief that Bitcoin is like digital gold, right? It's a hedge against inflation.
Right.
But Fidelity, on the other hand, they're using a model based on Metcalfe's law, which basically suggests that the value of a network, it grows exponentially with the number of users.
So the more people are using it, the more valuable it becomes.
In theory.
Yeah, in theory, right. And then Finney's prediction, well, it's obviously incredibly optimistic, but it kind of highlights just how much Bitcoin could be worth if it really does become this globally adopted currency,
Yeah, it's the dream scenario for a lot of Bitcoin believers.
But does that mean that someone should just, pick a prediction they like and just go with it?
I don't think so. Remember that the Nakamoto portfolio Monte Carlo simulation we talked about?
Yeah.
That tries to model Bitcoin's future price.
Yeah.
Based on all sorts of factors, historical data.
Right.
But even with all that, it still comes up with like a ton of different outcomes.
Yeah.
So it really highlights that uncertainty when it comes to predicting Bitcoin's price.
There's no guarantee.
There's no easy answer.
So no magic formula, no crystal ball. That's kind of exciting, but also kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah, definitely. It means that the potential is there, right, for huge gains.
Yeah.
But there's also the possibility of, some pretty big losses, too. So, how do you navigate that uncertainty?
Especially if you're, thinking about trying to get rich from Bitcoin, right? How do you even approach that?
It's a good question, and I think a big part of it is understanding the different ways to even get involved with Bitcoin.
Right, like buying and mining.
Exactly. Those are the two main avenues talked about, so let's start with buying.
Okay, so buying Bitcoin.
That's kind of the most straightforward way to get into the market, Create an account on an exchange, Coinbase, Binance, something like that. You can buy Bitcoin directly with, your dollars or whatever your local currency is.
Okay, so it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's relatively simple, and it gives you, direct exposure to how Bitcoin's price moves.
So if it goes up, your investment goes up. If it goes down, well,
Exactly. But then there's mining.
Right, mining. That's how new Bitcoin is created,
Yeah,
right?
that's right, yeah.
So could that be a path to riches?
Well, mining is definitely more hands-on than just buying Bitcoin. You need specialized hardware.
Okay.
You need some technical knowledge, and it can be quite an investment up front.
Got it. So you're not just, clicking a button and buying some Bitcoin.
No, not quite. You're essentially competing with other miners to solve these complex math problems.
And if you solve them,
you get rewarded with Bitcoin.
So it's like a digital gold rush.
I like that analogy.
Right. But instead of like shovels and pickaxes, you've got computer processors and algorithms.
Exactly. And just like in a gold rush, there are different ways to go about it. You can go solo, set up your own mining rig, or you could join a mining pool.
Like a team effort.
Yeah, exactly. You combine your computing power with others, it increases your chances of earning those Bitcoin rewards.
Interesting. So mining sounds like it requires a lot more technical expertise and resources than buying. Is it even worth it for someone who's just, kind of starting out in the crypto world?
That's a question a lot of people have, yeah. And the answer is, like most things Bitcoin, it depends.
It depends on what?
It depends on your risk tolerance, how comfortable you are with technology, your access to things like cheap electricity, and of course, how much you believe in Bitcoin's long-term potential.
Okay, so it's not a decision to make lightly.
No, definitely not. But, let's say someone does decide to take the plunge, right? They want to try mining. What should they keep in mind?
Yeah, good question.
I think the first thing is understanding the costs,
Like the equipment.
Yeah, mining equipment can be expensive, and then the electricity to run it can be a lot, especially if you've got this, power-hungry mining rig.
Yeah.
Then there's the technical side of things, right? You need to know how to set up your equipment, maintain it.
Make sure it keeps running.
Exactly. And you need to stay up to date on all the latest software, the security protocols. It can be a lot to keep track of.
That does sound like a lot. So is there an easier way to get involved in mining without, having to become a tech expert?
Well, there are options for those who want to, dip their toes in without getting too technical.
Okay, good.
Like cloud mining, for example. You basically rent mining power from a provider.
Oh, interesting. So you don't have to actually have the equipment yourself.
Exactly. Or you could invest in a mining company.
Oh,
They handle all the technical stuff, and then you share in the profits.
So those options let you kind of participate in mining without having to do all the heavy lifting yourself.
Exactly.
But let's be real, right? A lot of people are drawn to Bitcoin because of those stories we hear about people who made a fortune from it.
Oh, yeah, the Bitcoin millionaires.
Yeah, like Changpeng Zhao, the founder of Binance.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase. What can we learn from, their journeys?
I think what's really interesting about these folks is they were all early adopters of Bitcoin.
So they saw it coming before, it was a big thing.
They saw the potential before it became mainstream, exactly. And they weren't just buying and holding,
They were doing more.
They were building businesses, infrastructure around Bitcoin.
So they were kind of creating the wave, not just riding it.
Exactly. They were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They saw this opportunity in this brand new industry, and they took risks to make the most of it.
So it's not just about like buying low and selling high.
It's about being part of that whole ecosystem.
Contributing to it.
Yeah, contributing to the growth and development of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
But, were they just lucky? Right place at the right time? Or was there more to it than that?
That's a great question. Everyone thinks, they were just lucky. But, you don't build what they built just from luck.
Right. And I think their stories highlight the importance of vision, strategy, and really understanding the technology.
So they weren't just throwing money at it.
No, they were making calculated decisions.
Based on their research and their belief in Bitcoin's potential.
Exactly. They were taking calculated risks, not just gambling.
Right. And they were willing to put in the work.
To innovate, yeah.
Adapt to this world that was constantly changing.
The wild west of crypto.
So we've talked about price predictions, buying, mining. We've even gotten a glimpse into, what makes a Bitcoin millionaire.
We've laid some good groundwork.
Yeah, but there's still so much more to consider.
Yeah, a lot more to unpack.
We haven't even touched on those factors that could really shape Bitcoin's future, like regulations, technology, all that.
Yeah, and those are crucial pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
If we really want to understand if Bitcoin can make you rich,
we need to look at the big picture.
I need to look beyond the hype and beyond the price predictions.
Okay, so we've talked about, the price predictions for Bitcoin, how volatile they are, and all the ways to actually get your hands on some, whether it's buying it or mining it.
Yeah.
But what actually drives the price? What determines whether Bitcoin's going to make you rich or not? There's got to be more to the story than just numbers and technology.
Yeah, for sure. We've got to consider the forces that shape Bitcoin's value. And a good place to start is with the age-old concept of supply and demand.
Supply and demand. That sounds pretty basic for something as complex as Bitcoin.
I know it might seem simple, but it's really the foundation of all markets, even the digital ones, right? So Bitcoin has a fixed supply. It's capped at 21 million coins. That's it.
Okay, so there's a limit. There can't just be endless Bitcoin.
Exactly. Scarcity is built into its code. And that's where things get interesting because demand, that fluctuates. It goes up and down. It depends on so many different factors.
So if more people want Bitcoin, but there's only a limited amount available, the price goes up.
Exactly. Think of it like a rare collectible, The rarer it is and the more people want it, the more valuable it becomes.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's where those halving events come in, right? I saw those mentioned a lot in the research you sent.
Right, right. So basically, every 4 years, the reward for mining Bitcoin, it gets cut in half. So even though more people might be mining, the rate at which new Bitcoin comes into circulation, it actually slows down.
Oh, so it's like it's getting even scarcer over time.
Exactly. And that's a huge part of the appeal for a lot of investors. They see it as this hedge against inflation, a store of value like a digital gold.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So you've got limited supply, potentially even decreasing over time, and then you've got demand that can go up or down. But demand isn't just about people actually using Bitcoin for, transactions or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's also about what people think it's worth, right?
You got it. Psychology is a huge factor in all of this. We see it all the time with FOMO, that fear of missing out.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely felt that with crypto before.
It can drive those prices way up as people rush to buy in before they, miss the boat. But the opposite can happen too. Negative news, fear in the market, that can lead to panic selling. And then
the price crashes.
Exactly. So it can be a roller coaster ride.
It sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, right? Like if enough people believe Bitcoin's going to be worth a ton of money, their actions actually make it happen, at least for a while.
It's the power of belief, right? Especially when you're dealing with something new, something like Bitcoin.
Makes sense. So we've got supply and demand, we've got people's emotions and perceptions. But what about technology?
Right, because technology is constantly evolving. Your sources mention things like the Lightning Network.
Yeah, I saw that. That sounded pretty techy.
It is a bit technical, but it's important. The Lightning Network is basically a second layer on top of the main Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay, another layer. So why is that important?
Think of it like adding express lanes to a highway, right? So instead of all the traffic being jammed up on the main blockchain, smaller transactions, they can zip through these express lanes.
So it makes things faster, cheaper.
Exactly. It makes Bitcoin more practical for everyday use. And that's crucial if we're talking about mass adoption, right?
Right. If people can use it easily for, little things, like buying a cup of coffee, then that makes it more useful. And if it's more useful,
it could become more valuable.
Okay, so technology can play a big role. But what about governments? What about regulations? Where do they fit into all of this?
Regulation, the big unknown, right?
Yeah, like a wild card.
Exactly. Regulation can be a double-edged sword for Bitcoin. On one hand, clear, sensible regulation that could bring more legitimacy to the market.
Right, like it can make people feel more comfortable investing.
Exactly. Attract those big institutional investors, boost confidence. Remember when those spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved?
Yeah.
That gave Bitcoin a lot more credibility.
It felt like a big step forward for Bitcoin, becoming more mainstream. But I also remember seeing stories about countries cracking down on crypto, like banning trading or mining.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. And that can create a ton of uncertainty in the market, scare investors away, and then...
And then the price drops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So governments are still trying to figure out, how to handle Bitcoin, how to regulate this whole decentralized digital thing.
Because it doesn't really fit into the old ways of doing things, right?
It's a challenge for them, for sure. They want to protect consumers, prevent illegal activity.
Right, of course.
But they also don't want to stifle innovation or, miss out on the potential benefits of this new technology. So how all this plays out, how those regulations evolve, that's going to have a big impact on Bitcoin's future.
It's a lot to keep track of, that's for sure.
It is. It makes those price predictions we were talking about even more,
Uncertain.
Yeah. Even with the fancy models, the experts, it's still kind of a guessing game,
So when we're talking about whether someone can get rich from Bitcoin,
we can't just look at the price, right?
We need to look at all this other stuff too, all those forces we were talking about. Supply, demand, market psychology, technology, and of course, government regulation.
It's a complex picture.
It is. And I think that's what makes those Bitcoin millionaires we talked about even more interesting. They weren't just focused on the price. Right? They were building things, contributing, really understanding the technology. It was more than just like a financial gamble for them.
Right. They were true believers. They saw Bitcoin as something bigger, as something that could change the world.
And I think that's an important point, Maybe the question isn't just, can you get rich from Bitcoin? But how can Bitcoin fit into your overall financial strategy?
Right. How can it help you reach your goals, whatever those goals might be?
Maybe it's building long-term wealth. Maybe it's diversifying your portfolio. Maybe it's just having more control over your own finances.
Exactly. It's about more than just trying to get rich quick. It's about taking control of your financial future and seeing the potential of this new technology.
and thinking about the bigger picture, the impact Bitcoin could have on the world.
Exactly.
It's about financial inclusion, making things more accessible for everyone.
Right, and the ability to send money across borders easily without all those traditional gatekeepers.
That's a powerful idea.
It is, and that's what makes this whole space so exciting.
So even though we can't say for sure if Bitcoin will make you rich,
we can say that understanding all of this, the good, the bad, the potential, the risks, it's all crucial.
it's about being informed, making smart decisions. It's really about giving you the tools you need to navigate this whole world of Bitcoin.
Because it's a rapidly changing world, a world full of opportunities and challenges.
So we've really dug deep into all the different aspects of Bitcoin, the predictions, the buying and mining, and all those factors that can affect its price. But let's get back to that big question, the one that started it all. Can you really get rich from Bitcoin?
It's the million-dollar question, literally, right?
Exactly. And I mean, for some people, it's definitely been the ticket to some serious wealth. We saw that with those Bitcoin millionaires, right?
They're definitely out there. But their stories, they're not as simple as just buy Bitcoin and get rich.
Right. It was more than just luck. They were early adopters. They were building things, contributing to the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And I think that shows that understanding Bitcoin goes beyond just the price.
It's about seeing its potential.
Its potential to disrupt things, to change how we think about money, how we use it.
So while that dream of becoming a Bitcoin millionaire, it might be tempting, I think it's important to be realistic, right?
Definitely. It's important to understand the risks, the rewards, the technical stuff, the big picture.
It's all connected. So maybe instead of asking, can you get rich from Bitcoin, maybe a better question is, how can Bitcoin fit into my financial plan?
Right. It's about finding its place in your overall strategy.
Exactly. And, that could mean different things for different people.
Some people might see it as a long-term investment, others as a way to diversify. Maybe some just want more control over their own money.
It's about taking ownership.
Right. And thinking beyond just the price, thinking about the impact Bitcoin could have on everything.
Yeah, like financial inclusion, right?
Making the system fairer, more accessible for everyone.
Being able to send money anywhere in the world without needing those big banks.
It's a powerful idea.
It is. And that's what makes this whole space so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
There's so much potential. So even though we can't say for sure if Bitcoin's going to make you rich,
we can say that understanding all of this, the complexities, the potential, the risks, it's essential.
It's about being informed, giving you the tools, the knowledge to make your own decisions about Bitcoin.
Because it's your journey, right?
It is. So keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking questions.
Don't just take our word for it. Dive in and see for yourself.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Keep digging, and who knows, maybe you'll strike it rich.